Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Undergraduate Webinar Series, an interactive online platform connecting high school students to the Ashoka community. In this series, we aim to cover topics related to Ashoka's undergraduate program, where our academic counselors will guide you in understanding the various aspects of the university. Thank you for joining us for today's open house. My name is Abhir Bhalla, and I'm currently an incoming third-year student at Ashoka University. I'm majoring in political science, minoring in international relations, and also hope to do a concentration in media studies. My academic pursuits aside, I'm an internationally recognized youth environmentalist and have been working in the field of environmental conservation since over 8 years now. We also have with us today Mr. Ali Imran, who is the Vice President of External Engagement at Ashoka University, who is joining us for the webinar. Mr. Imran is looking after communications and PR, placements, admission and outreach, and international tie-ups at Ashoka. Mr. Imran is an MBA from INSEAD France and FMS Delhi, and has done a BA Electronics and Communications from Netaji Subhash Institute of Technology, New Delhi. Feel free to post any questions that you may have in the Q&A box. We'll be taking them up at the end of the session. So without any further delay, let's get this started. Over to you, Mr. Imran.
Thank you, Abir, for that introduction. Welcome everyone on what is a very warm Saturday morning here in Delhi NCR. Hopefully some of you are having better weather, especially the ones in the west and the south. What I'm going to do is we'll talk briefly about Ashoka. Obviously by now you would know a lot about it, but I'll just run it over once again for you. And then we'll throw the field open for questions. So let me start sharing my screen with a short presentation about the university. I hope everyone can see the screen. That is the familiar logo of Ashoka. Hopefully will become more familiar as more of you come to the university. Ashoka is actually the pioneer in India of what is called a liberal education. And I would like to once again reiterate what liberal education is, because sometimes it is misunderstood because of the presence of the word liberal. Liberal education means there is freedom to choose what you want to study, which is really a luxury that has not been available to Indian students so far, at least till we came along and some of the other universities came along. It is not just the study of what is called the arts or the humanities. It is the study of the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities. So this goes all the way back to Greek times, when actually the arts and the sciences were part of the same set of things that you had to study. So we have an interdisciplinary approach, not just a single discipline, but how that discipline interacts with other disciplines. What that means is that we will first give you breadth, and then we will give you depth in your chosen major. So it is a T-shaped education. At the beginning of your Ashoka education, you will do a set of foundation courses, which will give you a grounding in what is a liberal education, and then you will specialize and choose a major like you would in any other university. So we allow for breadth and depth, and of course, the real skills that we teach you and what liberal education gives you are the 21st century skills which are listed below. So these are the skills which we feel will be important to you irrespective of which career you take up, whether it's a tech career or a non-tech career or a career in the environmental field or anything that you choose to do. These skills will be usable, and that's something that we assure you of. What makes Ashoka unique could actually take the whole day for me to explain, and I can talk about it really for 24 hours, but obviously we don't have that kind of time. So we will give you 8 points here, which make Ashoka unique. You can explore before you choose. You can learn from the best. You can look beyond rote learning. And these three I will try to explain quickly. I think the first point I've already made, which is that when you do the foundation courses, you have an opportunity to explore before you choose. You will learn from the best faculty in this country, that much we can assure you with absolute confidence. These are people who have studied and taught at the world's best institutions, and who have then come and joined Ashoka because they believe in its mission to create a world-class liberal education institution right here in India. You will look beyond rote learning. So that's something that all of us who are part of the system and did school here in India, have specialized in. You memorize everything which is in the book. You take it out of your brain onto the paper on the day of the exam. And the very next day, you forget what you wrote on that paper. But that's not what Ashoka is all about. So you'll have to do a lot of reading, a lot of independent research, finding out things for yourself, having an opinion on what you're saying, and not just memorizing and putting down point 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The fourth thing that we offer is that this is a great education, this is a world-class education, but we've also made it affordable for all through financial aid. And that's something that we're very proud of, and we'll talk about it later in the conversation. This is about you for us are more than just your grades. So we do not look only at your marks. Marks reflect essentially what you did in your board exam on the day of the board exam. And particularly in a year like this and going forward, hopefully, the board exams will occupy a less central place in the evaluation of a student. But luckily for us and for you, we've actually been doing this since the time we started the university in 2014. So we look at you as a complete person. We do not look at you only as the 95%er or the 80%er or the 99%er who produce those marks on the basis of one exam. We have an extremely diverse and vibrant student body. Again, something that we're very proud of. We have students from hundreds of cities. We'll talk about that a little later. Extremely active, extremely committed, extremely involved with a whole set of activities, full of ideas. Our set of founders includes some of India's best known and prominent educationists, philanthropists, and so on. It's really a who's who of prominent people in India who've contributed to us, something that we're very proud of. It's a unique structure because we don't have any one founder, we don't have any one person whose name is on the building, except of course for the Emperor Ashoka. And we believe that the education that we impart to you at Ashoka gives you a launchpad to be a leader in whatever you choose to do. Doesn't always have to be a corporate leader, but whichever field you go into, we trust that we are giving you leadership skills which you will deploy to your advantage. The undergraduate program, which is what we're talking to you about today. When Ashoka was first launched, the idea actually was to have a 4-year program. But the UGC at that time did not allow non-technical courses to be more than 3 years. So the undergraduate program is 3 years. You will get a BA honors or a BSc honors degree after you finish the 6 semesters, which span the 3 years. You will do the foundation courses, which I've already talked about. You will do major and minor courses, and you will do co-curricular courses. We strongly recommend that you come back for the 4th year, which is an optional year. This allows you to actually complete what you start in the 1st year. It allows you to do practical things with your education. It allows you to add that last layer before you emerge into the world, which you need as per the original vision of Ashoka. As things stand, in fact, the new education policy of 2020 has said that undergraduate education should shift to a 4-year program. So in a sense, something that we had conceived of in 2014 is going to come true, not just for us, but for all institutions soon enough. Obviously, it's not yet been executed, which is why we recommend that while you will get, of course, a UGC recognized degree at the end of your 3rd year, we recommend that you come back for the 4th year and complete the experience. The 4th year is called a postgraduate diploma in advanced studies and research. These are the foundation courses which are mandatory for every student, irrespective of what she or he or they may choose to do as a major after this. The Introduction to Critical Thinking course actually is at the heart of what we're going to teach you at Ashoka, because it's all about being able to question and decide for yourself, not just have all the answers at the ready. In fact, a professor that I know at Ashoka quite well told me very early that we prefer students who are comfortable on the left side of the question mark, who are not always reaching for the right side of the question mark. People need to know that there is more than one answer to any problem. And that's something that is pretty fundamental to what we teach you. Literature in the world, uh, quantitative thinking, principles of science, environmental studies. The environment is going to be central to whatever you do later in life, and therefore you need to understand how to think about it. Indian civilizations, mostly in history, the way it's been taught to us in school, it's always been about the wide roads and the sources of water and the tax collection mechanism and the armies that king set up. But there's a lot more there that we need to understand as citizens of India and, of course, as citizens of the world about Indian civilizations. Economics, politics, and society, another thing that you will need to understand, irrespective of which career you're going to make, how these three intersect with each other. It's a fascinating course. Mind and behavior, which is a psychology oriented course. Again, going to be very, very useful to you, irrespective of what you want to do. And grade books. And grade books do not always have to be the ones that you imagine what they are, but it's a very, very carefully selected set of grade books that you will go through. So, as you can see, this lays a very broad foundation for the education that you're going to receive when you decide on your major, which you will only have to declare in your second year. These are the major, minor, and co-curricular courses. In the first column are the majors. You can see that we have 5 science, what would be called science courses. So there's bio, there's chemistry, there's computer science, there's physics, and there's and maths. And we have what would normally be called the arts or the humanities and the social sciences. So we have economics, English, history, philosophy, political science, psychology, and sociology and anthropology. These are one of these is what you will major in. Unfortunately, in 3 years, you will not be able to do a double major. So you will not be able to do 2 majors. You will be able to do only 1 major. We do have a set of interdisciplinary majors, which are natural combinations. For example, computer science and entrepreneurial leadership fits together because very often entrepreneurs will have to do something based on computers. And so this makes sense. Maths and computer science, similarly, English and creative writing. Economics and finance, perhaps our most popular interdisciplinary major. Economics and history, English and media studies, history and international relations, politics, philosophy, and economics, a course which before this was really offered only in a few colleges in the UK. Very useful for people who want to get into policy or the government or civil services. And English and performing arts, combined major, interdisciplinary major that we introduced very recently, actually. In the minors, you have entrepreneurship, environmental studies, international relations, media studies, visual arts, performing arts, and creative writing. You can also choose any of the pure majors as a minor. So theoretically, you could do a minor, you could do a major in economics with a minor in biology. It's completely up to you. Lastly, the co-curriculars, 2 of which are compulsory: art, film, performing arts, languages, photography, theater. These attract a lot of attention from the student body, many of whom have not had exposure to any of these in the schools because they were very busy studying for their exams. This gives them an outlet for talents that they would not have had a chance to express earlier in their school life. So some of the most sought after courses are in that last column. I spoke about the faculty earlier, some of really the world's best known faculty in their areas of specialization. We, as of now, have, in fact, I think these numbers have also become dated, but as of now, we have 135 full-time and 46 visiting faculty members. They have degrees from and have taught at some of the world's best institutions. This is a random selection. I mean, if you were to go to our website, you'd get a much better idea of the quality of the people and the quality of the institutions that they come from. The faculty is indeed the biggest differentiator of Ashoka, and that's what helped us to attract students when we first opened up. The 4th year, which I spoke about, what are your options in the 4th year? You can do an advanced major. You can convert a minor into an equivalent major. So while you may not have been able to do a double major in 3 years, if you spend the 4th year, you might be able to earn enough credits in what was your minor to make it a second major. You can do a research project and submit a thesis, almost like a PhD would do in a normal situation, quite unusual. You can be a teaching assistant to a professor and help other students learn. And you can pursue a new minor. And students take one or both, one or more of these options when they do the fourth year. We have a very good set of partnerships with universities abroad, and that enables us to offer our students the options of summer and semester abroad. You can see some of the names there. Our students who went to these universities, to Yale, to King's, to Columbia, to UPenn, to HEC Paris, to LSE, to Wellesley, etc. Every year, except for last year, obviously, which was a pandemic year, every year, more than 50, 60, in fact, I think it was 80 in a particular year, students do either a summer abroad or a semester abroad, which is a big advantage that they have when they're at Ashoka. The international partners I spoke about, you can see that some of the world's best known universities are among these partners. These are wide-ranging agreements. They include summer abroad, semester abroad, faculty exchanges, workshops, etc. So you can see there's UPenn, there's Yale, there's Berkeley, there's Wellesley, HEC Paris, which is actually a business school, which is tied up with a liberal education university like ours, Duke, King's, Trinity, Dublin, the University of Sheffield, Tel Aviv University, the Stanford University Center for South Asia, University of Aizu, Victoria, University in Wellington, Carleton College, Michigan, Lehigh, and so on. And I think this list is enhanced by a couple. We don't really want 100 partners. We want quality partners with whom we can have a meaningful relationship. And as you can see, these are some of the highest quality partners that you can have in the world of universities. As I said earlier, we look beyond marks when we evaluate you for coming to Ashoka. So this is a completely holistic process. We're going to look at every aspect of what you've done this far. It doesn't really matter if you're not the school topper. It doesn't really matter if you are the school topper. We're going to look at every aspect of your application. Stage one is application and assessments. And in the application, we have your academic scores. Obviously, for class 12, in most cases, the results would not be out, even in previous years, even forget about an extraordinary year like this. So you would give your predicted marks, typically predicted by the school. We also look at your SAT and ACT scores if you have taken those exams. We look at your personal essays. We have questions in the application. We look at a letter of recommendation, which is strongly advised. And we look at your non-academic engagement, what you've done outside the classroom. And that's also important for us to understand your interests and where you're going and where Ashoka fits in with that. Post this, there is a set of assessments, which is the Ashoka Aptitude Assessment, which is our own assessment, which is mandatory, and an on-the-spot essay, which is also mandatory. Both of these will happen on the same day for all the applicants in a particular round. Post this, there will be a shortlist for an interview, and that interview with the panel is also mandatory. Stage 3 is when we make you any of these options give you any of these options of decisions. A confirmed offer, a conditional offer, which is conditional on your board exams, a wait list, which depends on availability of seats later, a deferral of decision, which means that based on the application and the assessments, we were still not able to make a decision on your application. And therefore, you should come back to us when you get your final marks, and then your application will be re-looked at again. And of course, unfortunately, because the number of applicants is just too large now, there will be denials of admission to a large number of people. Stage 4 after this is financial aid. Ashoka has a need-based financial aid program, which means that we make you the offer first. And then if you say that you're having difficulty in financing your education, Ashoka will make sure that it gives you the aid that you require to come to Ashoka. The two processes, therefore, are completely separate. We are proud to say that no student has ever been denied education at Ashoka because of financial constraints. And that's something that we have sought consciously to do. The admissions timeline, we are actually at the fag end of it. 23rd of June, you can see the yellow highlight on round 4. We have 4 rounds. We've already completed 3. The round 4 deadline is the 23rd of June, 2021. The Ashoka assessments, which is the Ashoka aptitude assessment plus the on-the-spot essay, will happen on the 4th of July. And the decisions are likely around the end of July and beginning of August. So that's really what you need to focus on at this point, because time is actually short in terms of applying. I'm assuming that most of you are in the process of application, but you aren't, then you really should actively start working on the application. In terms of fees and financial aid, our fees, which is including residence, including tuition and residence, is 9.87 lakhs per annum. As I said earlier, we have need-based financial aid. So this is world-class education, which is affordable for all. If the student's family is having difficulty in making it happen for them, then Ashoka will step up and provide the financial aid. This will be based on the papers that are submitted along with the application, and they will be evaluated and scrutinized, and then aid will be given to you. In last year's class, 42% of the students were on financial aid. Overall, I think close to about half of our students are on financial aid provided by the university. There were 102 full scholarships, people who did not actually have to pay much at all. 6.3% of the students actually had a family income of less than 2 lakhs. That's the diversity I was talking about earlier. The diversity in this case applies to the socioeconomic background. And 6% of them, something they're very proud of, were the first people in their family, in the history of their family, to go to college. Again, something that we're very proud of in terms of providing access to education to anyone who wants to avail of it. The thing that students are interested in, campus life, of course, extremely vibrant campus life is something that Ashoka boasts of. But before that, these are some details of the living arrangements. So fully furnished and air-conditioned residence halls, round-the-clock access to first aid and medical assistance, lounges, and all services that you would need, including laundry, a documentation center, etc., etc. This number is obviously would have gone up, but at last count, it was 55 plus clubs and societies. Any interest that you have, you are likely to find a club or society which already exists on campus. And if you have an interest which is unique, you can set up your own club. These are all student-run clubs. They conduct a whole set of activities. They go and participate in activities outside campus. They add a lot of life to what happens in the students' daily routine. So in fact, during the day, the students are busy with their studies, but once the evening sets in is when all these activities kick in. In terms of sports and fitness, we have all the facilities that you could possibly need. A 25-meter swimming pool, basketball, badminton, squash, and so on. Every sport that you can name. We also have a shooting range because we've had some international shooters as part of the student body. So this is a fully equipped shooting range. I spoke about diversity earlier, just an illustration. You've seen the numbers on the first column already, but in terms of the last class, 18 countries, 105 cities, 342 schools from all over. So really very, very diverse. And we also make sure that people don't always hang around with people they already know. So you will room with somebody who's completely different from you, because both of you will benefit from that exposure, is something that we believe in. In terms of gender diversity, 56% women in the class of 2023, 43% men and 1% gender neutral. What happens after Ashoka? In two senses. One is placements and the other is higher education. Since 2018, and this year's batch is still in progress, we've placed more than 750 students. More than 250 plus companies normally come for recruitment to Ashoka, and that number is going up every year. Median salary is 10.5 lakhs for students of the ASP program, and the highest salary offered so far is 30 lakhs a year. A short list of some of the organizations which recruit from Ashoka. You can see going by sector, you can see banking and finance there, management and consulting, technology, education and development, research and think tanks, media and communication, and digital and startup. And you can see some of the most prominent names in the country are listed in each of those columns. In terms of higher studies, some of the best institutions in the world have made offers to Ashoka students. Oxford, Cambridge, Brown, Cornell, Emory, ISB, Columbia, and so on. I don't need to read the whole list. You can see that it's a very, very impressive list, and this number is going on increasing every year. Before we start the questions, I want to just reiterate the final round, which is round 4 applications are open. The application deadline is really not that far, 23rd of June. You have those numbers for contact if you need to talk to us. And with that, I think I can stop sharing the screen and we can call Abir in to ask whatever questions are being posed by the audience.
Hi, thank you for that presentation, sir. And yeah, I think we can start the Q&A session because we have a lot of questions.
Sure.
I think the first question is, can I apply more than once in an admission cycle?
Unfortunately not. Once you've applied and if unfortunately you are not successful, then you have to apply next year.
Another question which is there is that, is there an age limit to apply for the undergraduate program?
That's a good question, but I would say that typically someone who's applying would be 17, 18, and then if they've taken a gap year, uh, or they did something for 2 years and they're applying. I mean, I think probably the maximum we must have had is 20 or 21. So I don't think, because if you're 22 and your batchmates are 17, that's a strange dynamic, and that's really not something that happens very frequently.
Right. Another question is, can applicants know about their Ashoka aptitude assessment scores, and can they also get feedback about their essay? And related to this, is there also a cutoff for the AAT?
So I think the answer to that is that this is a comprehensive process, like I said. So every element of it, starting from your application till all the way to the end, has a weightage. But that weightage is not something that is publicly shared. It's something that we factor into our decisions. So to answer that more specifically, the Ashoka aptitude assessment or the on-the-spot essay, we do not give out separate marks in the public domain. I think what you can be sure of is that no one parameter out of everything that you've done, no one parameter is strong enough to get you in or get you out. So sometimes people feel that if a particular thing didn't go well, is that why I was rejected? No, that's not the case. All the elements have a certain weightage and all the elements are taken into consideration. So just because someone has no extracurriculars at all doesn't mean that they can't make it. Just because someone has 99% doesn't necessarily mean that they will make it. If someone didn't do all that well in the Ashoka aptitude test, doesn't mean the Ashoka aptitude assessment doesn't mean that they won't make it. It's really a whole combination of your entire application that goes into the decision. I hope that answers the question.
And one more question, and if I may take this one, is do students with a gap year face a challenge while applying to Ashoka?
Sure.
So my roommate, in fact, my intended roommate, had we been on campus, is someone who took a gap year. And in my experience, it's not challenging as long as you can justify or explain why a gap year was taken. I think that's the sort of crucial element there. But yeah, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because we understand that sometimes students just want to figure out what they want to do before they apply somewhere. Sometimes they're just burned or exhausted because of all the studying that they've done for the last 2-3 years. So therefore, they do take a gap year. But as you said correctly, Abir, I think it's important for them to be able to say what they did in the gap year. So while it's nice that if you were just Netflixing and chilling, that's also okay. But you need to be able to say what you were doing. And for instance, if you're saying that I was trying to figure out what I want to do, then what were the steps you took in that direction to either select or reject some things? So we would like to know that. I think that's really the only thing. But there are plenty of students who apply, and it's absolutely not a disqualification to have a gap year.
And one question, which is pretty simple, but do I need to be there in person for the interview or the on-the-spot essay? So
No, I think since the pandemic began, which of course seems like forever, but actually it was March last year, we've actually been online, including the interview and all the processes. So you don't have to be there physically. We will do it virtually. And like I said, the on-the-spot essay and the Ashoka aptitude assessment will actually happen on the same day for all the people who applied in a particular round. As and when things
another
open,
question, sorry.
as and when things open up, we will decide whether to go back to a physical process.
Another question is, what is the last date to submit my application? Is there another round after this?
So like I just said, 23rd June is the last date, uh, which is the end of round 4. So as far as another round is concerned, honestly, at this point, there is no plan to do that. We have actually started this process in October. So we've already finished 3 rounds. So I think by this time, most people would have made up their mind about whether to apply or not.
Uh, what is the acceptance rate at Ashoka this year as well as in the last year?
Well, I can't really give you a specific number, but I will say that it is low. uh, in fact, we are finding it quite tough now because our process is an intensive process. And the sheer number of applications that we are now getting uh, demands that intensity be applied to a very large number of applications every year. But we also know that we have to select the right students and the best students out of all the thousands and thousands who are applying. So I will say that we are now almost on par with some of the best universities in the world. But at this point, I really can't give you the number. We are not a very large university. I think you all know that. It's only now that we are going to build a second campus, and therefore the numbers will go up. But as of this point, including all the courses, including our postgraduate courses, we are still less than 2,500 students. And every year, the undergrad batch so far has not really exceeded more than a number higher than 600. So, and like I said, the number of applications is just becoming larger and larger and larger. So that ratio is getting lower and lower every year.
Right. One other question is which is about financial aid. Can anyone apply for financial aid, and on what basis does Ashoka offer financial aid? If
Absolutely.
I may take that, sir, and then, yeah. So, if anyone can apply for financial aid, provided that they have, cause to do so. They should be under, situations which require financial aid. And on what basis? Well, to my knowledge, you have to submit there's a whole list of documents which are shared with you once, you get a confirmed you get an offer of admission, as sir mentioned. And then, if you, after you know that whether you've gotten or not, then, Ashoka says that, if you want financial aid, you can apply for it. And these are the documents we require. So they look at those documents and then sort of, decide.
Yeah, and I think, like you said correctly, Abhi, anyone can apply. It doesn't mean that everyone will get. It just means that there is no bar on applying. But whatever you're submitting to us as evidence of uh, your need for financial aid will then be scrutinized by a committee, and a decision will be conveyed to you in due time. There may even be a conversation with the family just to understand the situation. But it's as simple as that, really.
Two somewhat related questions which have been asked are, what do you mean by need-based financial aid? And are there any merit-based scholarships at Ashoka?
Right. So this is actually the same question. It is need based in the sense that it is based on financial need uh, rather than anything else. So to answer the second part of the question, as of now, there are no merit based scholarships at Ashoka.
Another question is, I think I've sort of already answered this, but at what stage can one apply for aid? And do we have to indicate it in the application form? So perhaps the second part is.
Yeah, I mean, you will apply obviously only after you receive an offer, after you hear from us. Uh, and you can indicate it in the beginning, but you can also indicate it after you get the offer. It doesn't really affect, as I said, the two processes are independent of each other. So no one should have any hesitation or any fear that the two are linked in any way. Because sometimes people may feel that if I say that I'm going to need aid, the university will not look at my application favorably. Absolutely not. The two are not connected. So the application is going to be looked at purely as an application.
Does financial aid apply for the fourth year as well? And what semester? I think the question is probably, whether semester, it applies to semester abroad programs as well.
So yes, it does apply. I think once we give you aid, then we would typically give it to you for the whole uh, tenure that you will have at Ashoka. As far as the programs abroad are concerned, my experience has been that it would be the Office of Global Affairs, which of Strategic Education and global global programs, which would have to look at it. We do try to help, obviously, as far as possible, even with that. It really depends on what is the specific thing that the student is going for. What is it that the partner university expects in terms of fee payment, etc. Because sometimes a partner university may say that they want the fee equivalent of that university. And then obviously it's a whole other conversation about how aid should be provided to the student. But we try to help as far as possible for a student to realize that dream of going for a semester abroad or a summer.
Right, absolutely. And if I could add to that, there's yeah, I mean, I know a friend who went through a similar thing, and they also, so there's a bit of a separate process, like Sir mentioned, but Ashoka tries their best to help wherever possible.
That's
So yeah, yeah. Moving to boards and grades and those kinds of things. Some of the questions which have been asked are, how does Ashoka give confirmed offers with predicted scores? And related to that, how can someone predict their grade 12 scores?
So I'll answer the second part first. In most cases, and unless I'm totally misinformed, I have seen that now schools are actually able to give you predicted scores, which are based on how the student did in in the previous exams in school. So if that is not available for some reason, then you can of course self-predict the score. Uh, the thing with the process now is that we actually don't need to wait for your board exams to give you an offer. We are giving you the option because we are anyway taking the Ashoka aptitude assessment as a compulsory test. You could also have taken the SAT or the ACT, and we have your predicted marks. We can actually make you a firm offer based on any of the first three. And if there is still something that is not there in the application or something's not adding up, then we can make the offer conditional to you meeting your predicted marks. So if you're predicting 90% or 95% or whatever it is, then we can say that we make you a conditional offer. If you match these marks, this will convert into a confirmed offer. I hope that addresses the question.
A related question with regards to grades and SATs and all is that, are the SAT scores mandatory, or is it optional for standardized tests
No,
this year?
it's not mandatory. It's just one more option. If you've taken the SAT or the ACT, anyway, you will be taking the Ashoka aptitude assessment. Whatever is the best out of those is the benefit that we will give you.
And does Ashoka value the NIOS, which is the National Institute of Open Schooling certificate, equivalent to the other boards of grade 12 certificate?
Yeah, so we have some students from NIOS. We are familiar with. We are actually very open in terms of which board you come from, because you will have to pass through a process anyway. So yes, anyone who's done the NIOS is most welcome to apply. We do have students from NIOS. I don't know if you know any, but we have some students.
Yeah, and in fact, if I can add to that, we also have students who are homeschooled, and then they tend to take an equivalency. So yeah.
That is correct. That's right. That's right.
Well, these are interesting questions because they relate to well, academics and student life. So, in which semester do we choose our subjects? If I may answer that, I think it really, you choose your subjects for the upcoming semester right before the semester starts. So typically in your first semester, you generally have you have to do your foundation courses. There's no other choice in your first semester. In your second semester onwards, that's where you generally have a ratio of 3 foundation courses is to 2 major courses, or you can, that's really up to you. But your courses with regards to your subjects really start from your second semester onwards, and typically that process happens a month and a half before the semester starts, and you get a list of all the courses being offered by various departments. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. Another question is, can I choose 2 minors? If I'm sir, let me know if you want to come in on any
No,
of
of
these, but
course. No,
just
no, please
answering
go
at the
ahead.
same time.
Please go
You can choose 2 minors, but it really depends on your combination of subjects.
ahead.
So typically, as someone who's going into my third year, what I'm planning to do right now is I'm doing a major, a minor, and a concentration. And I'm thinking that in my fourth year, if I mean, mostly I'm going to be staying for my fourth year. In my fourth year, I'll bump up my concentration to a minor. So you can do a second minor in your fourth year, of course. And in some very selective cases, perhaps it might be possible. But yeah, generally a second minor happens in your fourth year more often than not. Um, then there is a question which is, do you offer a major in mathematics and computer science? How can I inquire more about the program? Do you want to take that, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in the presentation. It is an interdisciplinary major, and these two fit quite well together. You can take a look at our website. Hopefully, there is information there that will be useful to you. And if you still have questions, you can write to us at the email address that we've indicated.
Another question is, what is the eligibility criteria for biology? And if I can extend this, even to the other sciences, are there any prerequisites which are required?
So, uh, I think for physics and chem, uh, and Abir, you can correct me, but I think maths, you have to have maths in your school in the last 2 years of school, because otherwise it's just too much to catch up.
Absolutely,
Biology,
yeah.
I'm not sure if there's a prerequisite in that sense.
Yeah, so I do know that for physics, maths and chem, you need chem, and no prerequisite for bio. For economics, it's definitely recommended that you have maths in 11th and 12th, but the professors do make exceptions if the students write to them. But again, that's mostly, an exception. So it's always better if you have maths in grade
Yeah.
11 and 12 for eco as well. Talking about the next question, which I think I can take, is, what is the ideal choice of major for someone who wants to take media studies? Well, there's an interdisciplinary major of media studies and English or creative writing, one of the two, I think. So that interdisciplinary major is a great option for sure. Other than that, the media studies department, even doing a minor is, and this is, coming from me as someone who developed an interest in media studies totally unexpectedly. It's I think the minor is, gives you a good grounding in media studies. So of course, otherwise, the other option is to do an interdisciplinary major. Right now, there's no pure major for media studies. Um, the next question is, if a student wishes to do pure majors in, yeah, I've already answered this, whether maths is necessary. Another question is, how many interdisciplinary majors can we take? Well, very simply, you can only do one interdisciplinary major, and doing that in itself is a lot because it's an interdisciplinary major. Very often, when you have interdisciplinary majors such as PPE, which is political science, philosophy, and economics, you may even not be able to do an additional concentration or a minor because you're doing so many courses just for that one major. The next question is, can we change our co-curriculars in the middle of the year? Well, that's an interesting question, because co-curricular courses at your time in Ashoka, during your 3 years, you need to do a minimum of 2 co-curricular courses. So you can do that in any semester you want, provided you get that course. So typically you'll get your co-curricular course in your second year. And then of course you have a bunch of, 10, 12 co-curricular courses to choose from. Um, so what you technically speaking, you can't change your co-curriculars in the middle of the year, but definitely in the first week or two of the semester, if you feel that, you're not liking this co-curricular, you can drop it and, change it within the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, not more than that. So it's mostly, during the semester rather than in between the year. Related question is, would it be possible to change majors or minors after choosing, because there is a possibility of not liking or finding yourself the right fit for a specific course? Of course, that's the best and unique part about Ashoka, because I know someone, very rare situation, who came in wanting to study political science, but now is majoring in biology. So that's a huge jump. And that's exactly why foundation courses are so important, because they give you exposure to these different disciplines, which you perhaps not, thought you may even have an interest in, or which you don't even know that much about. So yeah, you can definitely change your majors or minors. There's of course a cutoff, which is typically, I think, the first or second semester of your second year. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. But by your second year, it's encouraged that you sort of, have a decision on what you want to major in.
Yeah.
The next question is it recommended to stay for the fourth year? With the additional fourth year, will the degree be for 3 years or for 4 years? So maybe you want to take this.
So, no, so like I said in the beginning, the course was conceived to be a 4-year course, but as of now, at the end of your third year, you will get a degree, which is a proper BA honors or a BSc honors degree. We recommend that you come back for the fourth year, and we find that most of the students do. So it is not, it's not as if it's mandatory. Was there another part to the question? Sorry.
That's about it. So yeah, essentially you get a separate degree for your third year, and you get a separate degree for you get a separate certificate, so to say, for your fourth year.
And I think the other thing to consider here is that many universities in the US, if someone wants to go for a master's, they require you to have done 12 years of schooling and 4 years of college. So in that sense also, if you've done the fourth year here, then you have 4 years of college.
Yeah. Another question is, what is the eligibility for summer or semester abroad programs? Well, in my experience, it's unique to each university, the partner university that you're applying for. But the best way to think of it is a sort of condensed, concentrated version of a college application. Like you're applying to Ashoka right now. Similarly, the best way to think of, a semester abroad program is a sort of condensed version of that. So it depends from university to university, but you'll get a lot of guidance on that from the global office, once you come to Ashoka. Another question is, this is an interesting question. Since your science section is relatively new, is it on par with your arts majors? Is emphasis more on practical applications or research, or on theory or exams?
So that's a good question. And anyone who's looking at what liberal arts is traditionally understood as would wonder about this. But let me just say that exactly for that reason, the sciences agenda at Ashoka is actually huge, because in a sense, we've already established that we are the finest uh, university in the country for what is called the liberal arts. Now, for the last 3 years, the sciences have become a focus. And the kind of faculty that we are attracting, the kind of plans that we have, I can tell you that we are setting up a school of biological sciences. It's the single largest grant by any founder. I mean, it's a very, very, very large amount of money. There are two, maybe three Nobel laureates on the board of that school. So the sciences agenda of Ashoka, I can tell you, In the next 5 years, you will hear so much about it that you will perhaps not even remember that we first started out as what is called a liberal arts institution. The second part of that question, which is it research based? Yes, very much. In fact, not only do you have a research orientation in terms of the way things are taught, which means that there's live research to be done, and many classes actually take place in the lab, not just in the classroom. You can actually participate in research being done by professors, which is again something which is unique to Ashoka. I remember a paper that was co-written by a professor and an undergrad student. I mean, this is something that you'll perhaps not find in any other institution at the undergraduate level. So the sciences agenda at Ashoka is going to have an impact which is disproportionate even to the impact that it has had in the arts and humanities sphere. So that's the seriousness of it. And we have faculty from some of the finest institutions in the world and in India, including the IITs and the ICERs, but also from the MITs and other institutions in the West.
Right, absolutely. And if I can quickly add to that, we have the Trivedi Science Center for Biosciences, which Sir mentioned, which is, I think, being headed by Mr. Shahid Jamil. And it's so, these days with COVID and everything, he's being quoted in the papers every day. So, that just goes to sort of show
In fact, I'm
excellent.
glad you brought that up, Abir, because Dr. Jamil is the head of the Center for Biological Sciences. But in India's battle against COVID-19, many of Ashoka's faculty have actually been in the forefront. And you will see them quoted.
Even Professor Gautam Menon, yeah.
Professor Gautam Menon, Professor Shashidhara, these are all people who are at the edge of what is happening in scientific research in this country. So I think you need to have no doubt that this is a very serious agenda.
And can you tell us a little more about the research by faculty at Ashoka? And do undergraduate students have research opportunities in their area of interest? So
Yeah.
taking the second part, since that pertains to students, Ashoka actually has different centers. We have a center for environmental, I'm missing out on the name, but environmental awareness. We have a center for philanthropy and social impact. We have different centers, covering different fields and aspects of life. And with these centers, there are a lot of research opportunities which students have either as interns or as research assistants along with professors. So I know across all departments, as Sir mentioned, very often students are assisting professors in their research work. And then very often, most recently, being from the Paul department, I remember Professor Gilles had co-authored a paper with one of my seniors, which was published in the Hindu and different newspapers, and it got a lot of traction as well for the research that they had done. So definitely lots of opportunities for undergraduate students to do research, both with the centers and with professors. And so can talk about research with faculty, but the best way to learn about that is if you see our social media. The social media team is doing this series called Ashoka's Research Quest, which is so fantastic. These are these 8 or 10-minute videos which cover the different aspects of research which each of our professors are doing, and their books on them. So that's the best place to sort of, have a look at that. But sir, if you want to add to that.
No, I think you've summarized it well. I think the answer is that
Okay.
there will be no shortage of opportunities for research for students. In fact, the whole point I think that new age universities like Ashoka have tried to make is that it is not enough to only learn what already exists, but to participate in creating new knowledge. And research is new knowledge. So even if you're not a science faculty, you have to do some research in your field to make a contribution. It can't just be that there are books which already exist and those are memorized and the students just replicate that.
A lot more questions pertaining to admissions. So moving back to those, is it possible to hand in 2 letters of recommendation?
Well, I mean, we recommend that you give 1 letter of recommendation. I don't think it's really required, honestly. You can, but I mean, I've very seldom seen 2. I think 1 is good enough. Someone who knows you well. That's good enough. We don't really need a
No,
double.
absolutely. If I can second that, I don't think it's really needed because 1 letter of recommendation, like Sir said, generally shows that, you have a connect with whoever's recommending you and they truly know, your best abilities and skills. Another question is, can you please share examples of the kind of on-the-spot essay topics that are given?
Abir, do you want to share the topic that you were given?
Yeah, well, I remember that. So this is not a blanket rule by any chance. It's not a blanket rule by any sort of thing. But in my experience, at least my on-the-spot essays, there was one sort of tricky one and one relatively easier one. That's just completely, that depends on what you know more about. My question, for example, was something to do with movies and books. The fact that, our books such as Harry Potter, if a book like Harry Potter is converted into a movie, does it preserve its originality and its ideas? So that was a question I remember answering. So it really depends, more on what your area of interest is. But generally, you have two options, and then you need to answer one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, these would be prompts,
Yeah.
right? These are just it's to test how you think on the spot, essentially, because the questions that you will submit in your online application, obviously, you will not be the only one who worked on it. Even if you're the only one who worked on it, you would have shown it to many people. There'll be many inputs there. We are aware now, there are people who actually write these essays. There is a whole thing out there on how to prepare for Ashoka's applications and how to submit them. So the on-the-spot exercise tells us how you think exactly when there's no one with you. And sometimes the difference is so vast that it's like this cannot be the same person who submitted those essays and who's writing this. So these will be just prompts which make you think a little bit, not very difficult. Could be to do with an issue of the day, could be to do with something which is happening right now in society, or it could be, as Abir said, something like a conversion of books into movies, and is that something which preserves the essence of the book. So I wouldn't worry too much about what the topic is. These are not technical topics.
Absolutely. Another question is, how much weightage is given to co-curriculars and other aspects of the application form?
So, like I said earlier, these are all parameters which weigh into the process. No one parameter is enough to get you in or get you out. Obviously, if you have no co-curriculars at all, there should be, one would assume there's some explanation. Either it was just the circumstances, either you didn't have access, uh, it was the place where you were studying, where it's not encouraged, etc., etc. So to just leave it blank then invites questions on why that would be, because surely everyone would have some co-curricular or the other, if not one, if not five, at least one, right? At least a personal co-curricular, if not something that you did at a competitive level would be there. Uh, I mean, I really don't think there'll be a single applicant who doesn't do anything outside of study.
And yeah, I think I can add to that, that's what in some of the brochures or pamphlets you may have seen, Ashoka talks about holistic admissions. That's exactly what it is, because they're not just looking at your board grades, like Sir mentioned earlier, but they want to see what you are, who you are outside of just, your textbooks and your school learning. So another question which is there is, I remember a lot of people asking this when I was applying. How much difference is there in the acceptance rates, if you will, if someone applies in the last round, which is round 4, instead of earlier rounds? And is there any drawback of applying in the last round?
No, there's no drawback. I don't know in which round you applied, but I mean, the reason why we have 4 rounds is because it's just not possible to do it all in one round. The advantage of applying in the earlier rounds, obviously, is that then, for instance, if you apply in the first round, then by January, you already have a firm offer in your hand. And that leaves you mentally free uh, to choose to do what you want to do with your time. And in case you're applying elsewhere, you still have the confidence that you have the Ashoka offer in your hand. And in the time of the pandemic, particularly, I think students who got offers early in January and in March, and with all the uncertainty around board exams, it's a huge support psychologically. But per se, there is no difference in which round you apply. Really doesn't make a difference to us. We put in the same effort. You will put in the same effort as anybody else, and we will put in the same effort as we always do to look at your application.
Yeah, and yeah, I definitely know that that relief factor is a huge thing, and this was pre-pandemic because I had applied in the first round, and to know that I got a confirmed offer by I think I got my thing on Jan 3rd. That this was of course 2 years ago. It was fantastic. Before your boards, you have a college you can sort
Yeah,
of go to.
yeah, that's right.
So that's a big relief. How can we prepare for the assessments? Is there any ideal AAT score? And what type of testing does AAT cover? Is it purely objective along the lines of SAT and ACT? If I can answer that, I don't think there is an ideal AAT score in the first place because, as Sir mentioned, you don't get to know your score. That's one important aspect. At least I don't know if the pattern. I don't think it's changed now, but as of 2 years ago, Ashoka was encouraging students not to prepare for the AAT because it was on the basis of things you would already know. So it's like different
Yeah,
aspects. There's a little bit of English, a little bit of math, a little bit of so general knowledge, I would say. It's not it's not like your entrance exams such as, I don't know, CLAT or those BBA entrances or anything like that. It's a lot of everything. So there's a bit of logic, there's critical thinking, um these kinds of things, English. So yeah, it's pretty holistic. And so maybe you want to answer whether it's objective along the lines of SAT and ACT.
no, I mean, anyone who's taken any test, any entrance test of any kind, I think should have no problem at all. And even if you've done class 12th, which you have, I mean, honestly, I don't think you'll have any problems. It really isn't any more demanding than that.
Another question which is there is, would there be a limit in terms of the number of students who can select a particular major? What is the expected number of students what's the expected number of students intake for this academic year?
I don't think there's a limit on how many students can take a particular major. It just means how many sections will be formed out of that. Uh, this year, so last year we actually had, the last couple of years, we had 600 odd students. This year, the number may be a little more, but it'll depend because it's not as if you're going to select students only to make up a number. But that's broadly the number we have. It'll be between 600 and 700 is what the class size will be this year as well.
And this is an interesting question. Could you please explain how deferral of admission will work, especially now that boards have been cancelled?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is a year in which things have really not gone well for the students, and I think all of us feel for all of you. It's been a nightmare, but it's also an unprecedented time. So, uh, unfortunately, deferral. Okay, now what we do know is that the boards have been cancelled. Uh, what we don't know is what is this formula which is going to be applied to calculate the marks. But soon enough, we will know. I hope. And hopefully sometime after that the results will be announced, and as and when they are announced, we would like you to share your marks with us, and based on that there will be a relook at your application like I said earlier. So that's how deferral works. Unfortunately this year, because of the delay, something which should have ideally happened in May is likely to happen in July or August by the looks of it. Hopefully not August, because August becomes a problem. But as of now, this really is the way that it will work.
Right. Another question is, if we get shortlisted for the interview round, when will the interviews be conducted approximately, and what are the parameters of assessment in the interview?
So if you do get selected for the interview round, we will actually start interviewing sometime in July. Um since there are no board exams now, the real issue would have been if board exams were happening at the same time, because scheduling then becomes an issue for students. Although we always schedule around dates of the board exams, and we've never had a problem. But that now, since those are not happening, hopefully we can do it with less of an interruption. So So yeah, I mean, we'll be doing it starting July. It'll take us time to read applications, but typically we will start doing interviews after we've read a certain number of applications. There was a second part to the question.
The second part of the question
Yeah,
was, what are the
parameter.
parameters of assessment? Yeah.
So I think the first thing I want to say is that this is not an interview in the technical sense of the word. Uh, we've already seen your application. We've got a sense of what you are. This is a chance, and Abir, you can share your experience after I finish. This is a chance for us to see if there's something more there. Are you the same person who is reflecting who your application says you are? Uh, so we always advise students to be relaxed when they come in. It's a very relaxed interaction. The idea is not to put pressure. It's just to understand you a little better, and it helps if therefore it's a give and take, and if it's a conversation. So we just want to know you a little better. We'd like to know your interests. We would like to know uh, what your awareness is of what's going on around you in the world, uh, and of course we'd like to know why you want to come to Ashoka. So it's really a sort of final conversation after we've already seen your application to find out more about what you are. But Abir, I think you probably can say if what I'm saying is correct or not.
Yeah. My experience and the most important thing in the interview, parameters and all are fine. So I mentioned that, but by far the most important thing, which I know not just for myself but also for my friends, is that honesty is the most important in the interview.
Yeah.
You don't want to act smart and mention,
Yeah.
oh, we've read these books, because the Ashoka interviewers are amongst the most well-read people I have ever come across. So that's something, and that's just an example I'm giving. So honesty is the most important, and that, I mean, really goes without saying. Um, Somewhat related to this, are there any tips for the personal essays? And if I may take this, of course, the questions and the essays have now, the structure has somewhat changed from my time. I used to have one question. Now I think there are three, but the tips remain consistent. Which are, I think, what's most important is that you take time to think, you reflect on the questions, uh, write it yourself. Do not go for one of those, as sir mentioned, there are people who write your essays for you. Do not do that, because if not, if somehow you get lucky during your on the spot essay, you'll definitely be caught during your interview, because that's the whole purpose of the interview, right? So take time to think, write it yourself. Honesty, of course, is true for the essays as well. English or grammar is, very often I've also been asked from my juniors, is not the most important perhaps, but they want to see that it's your thought process, it's your, ideas that you're talking about. And one more, of course, two in fact tips which are important for the essays are to write a draft. This is something you would perhaps even remember from school days. Your teachers tell you that once you write your exams, revise it. So think of it a bit like that. Write a draft and perhaps have a look at it again after a few days. That's something we do even for college assignments. All our professors recommend to us that, write your essay, don't look at it for 24 hours or 48 hours, and then go back to it with a fresh mind. And stay within the word limit. Very important, because I mean, if nothing else, that is going to be so important. I know people, I've lost grades for writing words, for writing essays over the word limit. My grade went down by a whole, one third of a letter grade. So that's very important, not just during the application process but even during college. So yeah, I think those are the tips. And again, honesty, writing it yourself, all of those things.
I actually
So
only
if you
want
want to add to that.
Yeah, I have only one tip. Please be yourself. And please don't try to be anybody else. Nobody else is you. We are interested in you. Why would you pretend to be what you are not? I mean, the very fact that you're making it to this stage means that there was something in your application which is all about you. Please don't try to say things which you have not done. It's not relevant. Just talk about the things that you've done, and that's enough, honestly. As Abir said, if you try to be someone else anyway, at some stage it will backfire. So why bother? I mean, just don't. Just be cool. Be yourself. Relax. Have a conversation. You're just talking to two people. It's a panel as two people. You're talking to two people. That's it. There's nothing more to this interaction. We try to tell people right at the
And
beginning, nervous, that why are you nervous? And they say, oh, I've never had an interview before. And we say, but you've spoken to people before, right? So this was that. Sorry, Avir, you were saying.
No, exactly. And one big thing which I missed is the best thing to do is to write your essays on a Word document, perhaps, and then sort of copy paste it onto the form. That's always a good thing. Moving on to the next question, what is the admissions process for NRI students?
The admissions process is the same. I mean, what's the exact question here? Sorry.
The
I mean,
question is, yeah.
no, they'll submit their grades, they will submit the application, and they will be called for an interview. It's exactly the same. We have quite a few. I mean,
Yeah, we do. We do. I have a few friends from, who are NRIs whose parents are based in Belgium. So it's pretty much the same. Yeah. Okay. I think moving on to campus life. So does every student need to stay on campus? When is the campus likely to reopen? I'm going to let Sir take the second one of that. The first one, does every student need to stay on campus? Yes, both you all students need to stay on campus. Of course, pre-pandemic, we have two different systems of rules where students are allowed to leave campus if they want to visit Delhi, or if they stay in Delhi. Delhi students tend to come home over the weekends. But the simple and short answer is yes, students need to stay on campus, during the week. But so second part of the question to you.
yeah, that's an obvious question. But I think it's equally obvious that at this point, we can't predict that. I think we are preparing with the assumption that we can open on schedule. What it will depend on is what is the situation overall on the pandemic? What is the advisory that the authorities give us? This is shared accommodation, as Abir will tell you. Well, actually, maybe you can't, but yeah. But basically, I want to be two to a room. So there will need to be some guidelines on that. And vaccinations will have to be done for sure for anyone who wants to come onto campus, both vaccinations by that time. So while we are preparing for opening on schedule, I think it really depends closer to the time what happens in terms of all these factors.
Is it possible to get a tour of the campus? So both yes and no, because these days in the online forum we have a phenomenal virtual tour which is there on the website. And more than that, honestly, even better than the virtual tour is one of my seniors earlier this year took a drone video of the Ashoka campus. So you can find that. I mean, as someone who uses Instagram, I definitely know it's on Ashoka's IGTV, but I'm sure it's there on Ashoka's Facebook and probably LinkedIn as well. So that video is fantastic, but you have a virtual tour on the website if you want to see what the rooms and stuff look like, because obviously a drone didn't go into the dorms. And yes, I mean, pre-pandemic, of course, there were, I think, once a week or twice a week, something like that, tours off campus, which were being given. So yeah.
So we're also redoing the virtual tour a bit. It should be up
Okay.
soon.
Yeah, that'll be great. How are sports and extracurriculars being pursued as of now with the university being conducted online? Well, extracurriculars are definitely happening online. I can tell you that because as an environmentalist myself, a lot of my extracurriculars are environment related activities. So a lot of those are happening. Even co-curricular classes, in case someone meant that in the question, even those are happening online. Sports is a bit tricky because you can't really play football on a laptop unless you're playing FIFA. But yeah, I guess if your city permits and if it's safe enough, you can play in your neighborhood park or something. So yeah. This question is, Abhir, how is the student life at Ashoka? Well, that's a very open-ended but broad question, and simply I think it's fantastic because you have, and this is true even online. I was concerned that of course there are certain sort of trade-offs and sacrifices of being online. You aren't with your friends, you're missing out perhaps on the whole quote unquote college experience. But what's important is that I know for a fact that Ashoka, as compared to most other universities in India, was amongst the first to make a rapid transition to the online medium. And that was, I was not sure if that would happen, but it did happen. That was also true for student life, So our clubs, our societies, our ministries, our different sort of aspects they've all moved online. We have our meetings, and now with technology being the way it is, we have online games and stuff also, which we can play for team bonding exercises, stuff like that. So, with regards to student life, when people typically look at club societies, stuff like that, that seamlessly moved online. Of course, you can't sort of laze around in the lawns, having lunch in the Ashoka lawns under the winter sun is one of the best things. So that unfortunately is not something that can happen, but well, fingers crossed soon enough. So it's pretty good, both online and in person. But yeah, if anyone has more specific question on this, I'm happy to take that. In the meantime, so the next question is, does the fees include living expenses also?
Yeah, I mean, if by living expenses you mean residence, yes, it does. The number that I mentioned, it includes tuition and residence both.
And residence also includes food. So you have, when you make the payment, you have a certain meal plan. And of course, then over and above that, you have options. We have a few restaurants on campus and stuff like that where you can, buy stuff over and above the prepaid amount, so to say. Haryana domicile. Yes, interesting question. What is the benefit of having a Haryana domicile certificate? Is it mandatory to have the certificate, or will any other address proof also work?
So we are governed by the Haryana Private Universities Act, and therefore, yes, there is a benefit to having a Haryana domicile certificate because a certain number of seats have to be given to Haryana domicile students, subject to merit, of course. Unfortunately, no other certificate will do. So over the years, any other option that may have been usable, those have all fallen off the radar, and it's only the official Haryana domicile certificate which works as a proof that you are indeed a domicile of Haryana.
Yeah, so I think those are the end of all the questions we had. But before we conclude, sir, any last words or any advice that you would like to give to everyone attending? So,
Are you sure all the questions are done though? Because
yeah,
I mean,
these
I
are
know
the
that.
questions which I have. Yeah, yeah. We'll,
I
in
know
case
that
a few more come up, I'll just ask you. But in the meantime, if you want to give some general
yeah,
tips or advice,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, we do have a few more questions, but they're mostly repetitive. So, yeah.
I think that the advice which I gave about the interview holds. I think have the confidence to be yourself. I think Abir will tell you that not just at the interview stage, but even when you get into Ashoka, Ashoka will give you the freedom to be yourself. And that is something that so far you may not have had access to in most cases. Of course, if you've been lucky enough to be in a school where you get that chance, then that's wonderful. But the fact that you are a unique individual with unique capabilities, made up of elements which are unique to you, is something that we recognize. This is not, we are not looking for a formulaic uh, admission process. We want a diverse, vibrant, interesting class. So while we believe all Ashokans are very good when they emerge from Ashoka, they are very good when they come into Ashoka also. And part of that is that they are not the same as each other. And you will see the benefit of that when you come to the university because most of you, or certainly a large number of you, would have only met people like yourself for the last so many years. And depending on where you are, certainly the ones in the big cities would have only seen people like themselves. And it's only when you interact with someone who's completely different from you that your mind expands. And that's when you learn that there are so many answers which you have not thought of, that there are so many ways of looking at life that the life that you were living did not teach you. And so it's all about being yourself. You are a set of capabilities that no one else is. And that's something that I would advise you. That Ashoka will go out of its way to nurture your uniqueness is something that I can commit on behalf of the university. Uh, and that you will have enough opportunity to engage in all the things that you never could do before is another commitment that I can make on behalf of the university. Abir is right here. We teach these people to call us out if we are not telling the truth. I think he will say it if he feels that I'm overstating, right? So I think that is all I would say. So we look forward to welcoming as many of you as possible to the campus soon. And thank you, of course, for being here on a Saturday. And I do hope most of you are in an advanced stage of your application. By the way, I saw that the number of uh, that the blurb on the Q&A box now says 257. It was saying 230 just two
We do
minutes ago.
have a few last minute questions, which I was just going to come to. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I can take both of these very straightforward questions, which I can see at least. Are internships offered for students while studying?
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's both institutional and independent, which is to say that we have a career development cell in the Ashoka internship cell, which is under the career development office. But essentially, yes. So Ashoka helps you get internships both during the summer and during the winter break. And these days, now they're even helping us get internships for someone who really wants to go the extra mile and do something alongside studying. They're also giving opportunities for these online internships, and these are both paid as well as non-paid opportunities. And of course, by virtue of being an Ashoka student, you're also um, given some sort of, I don't know, respect, honor, whatever. As you can individually also go out and apply, and that's also very well received. As far as another related question is on-campus jobs, maybe Sir wants to answer this, but in my experience, yes, there weren't as many of those. I don't know how it'll be going forward. But there can be a few. It's not like your traditional foreign universities where you think a student will go out and sort of take a job, like outside or on campus. But you can have TATF positions. There
Yeah.
are working. You get opportunities with certain centers, so it's there, but not that much. If you want to add to that, so maybe.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, there is the option of what is called work study, but it would be of the nature that you said. So a TA or a TAF or helping out in a department or in a center, really. By the way, this
Another
is a
question.
very
Sorry.
intensive. Sorry, I should have said this, and I think we've kind of hinted at it, but this is a very intensive program, and it's going to take up a lot of your time. That much I can assure you. Between the studies and the extracurriculars, a student told me pretty early in my stint in Ashoka that life in Ashoka is a triangle, and the three vertices of the triangle are academics, social slash extracurricular activities, and sleep. And you can only have two of the three at any given time. So you can guess which one is really compromised for most of these students, right? So trying to fit in more into that, you can do it, of course. I mean, there are 24 hours in a day, but it really would be like burning a candle at both ends, is what I think.
No, I couldn't agree more. Sleep is something which gets sacrificed, particularly when I was on campus. But and I do want to say, if I can be completely honest, I came to college thinking, I don't know, I blame Bollywood. I'd seen Three Idiots. I thought college will be very chill. You can go around.
Oof.
But Ashoka, as compared to a lot of other universities as well, academics are, really
Yeah,
intense, as Sir mentioned.
yeah.
Moving to the next question, we've got a few last questions now. What are some of the languages offered at Ashoka? Well, as part of our co-curricular courses, we have, I know we've offered French, Spanish, German, Marathi, Sanskrit. Sanskrit is something we're, offering as a main course as well, not a major, but as a course as well, effective from this semester. But I don't know if that'll happen every semester. But there are different languages. It's just important to remember that in 8 to 9 or 12 weeks or 13 weeks, whatever the duration of a semester is, you can't master a language such as Sanskrit, and that too through a master any language through a co-curricular course, which is something you do for perhaps 2 hours or 3 hours a week. So that's important to sort of keep in mind. But definitely there are a wide variety of languages which are offered. um, Another question is, how is Ashoka in terms of its treatment of the queer community? Is it queer friendly? Well, the simple answer is overwhelmingly friendly. Ashoka is one of the most queer friendly spaces in India, if I may say so. So very, very friendly, and it's all good over there. I can assure you about that. Um, is there a club at Ashoka for social responsibility? That's an interesting question. Yes and no. So there are different, there is a club called NIV, which works on social work. There's Enactus, of course, Enactus Ashoka, which also works on social work. We also have, as part of the student government, there are ministries. So under the ministries, we have, I think, the Ministry for Community Well-being. So, the process to get into club societies and ministries is largely similar, and you can always be a part of those. So those are all the questions which were shown to me, and I think the rest might be a little repetitive. So sir has sort of shared his words of wisdom or advice. I think I've been asked to give a few concluding tips. I would say, especially for students who are in round 4, it's important that I know a lot of juniors who reached out to me and asked me, oh, will we have a shot, or all those kind of things. I think that's not important. You need to know that if you're a worthy candidate, Ashoka will take you. That's what's important. And linked to that, of course, as both sir and I mentioned, it's very important that you're true to yourself, because college applications, and of course I didn't apply only to Ashoka. I can tell you that in my experience of applying to not just Ashoka but also colleges in India and abroad, I was fortunate to get into most of them. But even then, what I noticed for Ashoka was that it's truly holistic admissions, this T-shaped curve. All of these things are things you hear during the application process, but they're definitely also true. It's not just something that's said. So your, literally speaking, your on the spot essay will be as important as your interview. Your on the spot essay will be as important perhaps as your grades. So what I'm trying to say through this example is that, think of it like, five a baby puzzle that you give to babies, 5 or 10 pieces. Until you have all 5 or 10 pieces together, it's not an application.
Yeah.
Even if just 1 or 2 pieces are missing. So all 5 or 10 of those pieces are important. And yeah, just be honest. And I can tell you that Ashoka's team is fantastic. I thought that, like many of these numbers which they give, companies and other universities share these numbers, rarely anyone picks up. Ashoka will pick up, provided you call it during working hours. So feel free to reach out to them for any questions, any queries, anything you may have, any help you may need. They're very responsive both on email as well as on phone. Um, and I can tell you one thing. I thought I might be being a little too honest here, but I remember when I was applying to Ashoka, all my parents and their friends were saying, "Oh, Ashoka, so great! It's the new and upcoming university." And I thought, hey, what is so great about it? Because so many people were saying, oh, it's fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. But I can tell you, if anything, even after all that praise, it was underrated, because it's so good. And I'm not making a pitch here. I'm not being paid to say this or do this. This is just on the basis of my experience and time at Ashoka. Like I mentioned, doing media studies was something I never thought I'd have an interest in. So you actually sort of come in thinking one thing, and you learn so many different things, and you go away a little better, a little improved, and a little more knowledgeable. And that's thanks to our faculty. So that's all I will say. With that, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that this webinar was helpful in knowing more about Ashoka University's undergraduate program. Few last points before I wrap up, before we wrap up today's session is, do take a minute, please, to share your feedback with us. The link for the feedback form is provided in the chat box on Zoom. We also invite you for a question answer round with the admissions team on Thursday, the 17th of June at 6:15 p.m. in the evening. The registration link for that session is also in the chat box. And I would like to inform our audience and remind them that the final round of applications for the undergraduate program are open. The last date to submit your application in this round is the 23rd of June, 2021, which is, I think, 11 days away. So get cracking if you want to. And you can start your application at apply.ashoka.edu.in please do visit our website, www.ashoka.edu.in, for complete details on the admissions process and timeline. And one quick fun fact is that these days, if you Google Ashoka, you don't get Ashoka, the historic leader, you get Ashoka University. That's something which Google has started showing up recently. So that's interesting. If you have any other further queries or would like to know more about Ashoka's unique interdisciplinary programs, you can write to us at apply@ashoka.edu.in or call us on the number provided on the screen. That's something I've already sold to you enough. So thank you and take care and stay safe. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank
thank
you.
you, Mr.
Thank you.